Welcome to the KidMin podcast with Dr. Val and Dr. Virginia, where we talk about everything KidMin
and pull back the curtain on some of the surprises and challenges in children's ministry that nobody prepares you for.
I'm Dr. Val, and together we have over 45 years of experience in children's ministry.
I'm Dr. Virginia. Valerie and I met over 10 years ago in our doctoral program at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. We are excited to share with you all the great stuff that we have picked up over the years. We want to minister to you, the children's minister.
Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are especially excited because we are once again together in the same state. If you didn't hear from a previous episode, we actually got together in Sandestin at a resort for a few days to work on some planning for our podcast, for some projects that we're wanting to work on. We're getting ready we're going to be speaking at the Children's Pastors Conference in Orlando soon. And so we wanted to get some work done on that conference. And we just decided that it would be fun to get together because we are always doing things online since we live in separate states. So it's been so great to be together for a couple of days. And we thought, well, while we're together, let's record some episodes actually in the same room. So we are very excited to be with you today.
Yes, and very excited to be starting a new series. We just finished up our first series of episodes on the Howard Gardner's learning styles.
Right.
And so, of course, we're just going to go ahead and jump straight into a new series that we are super excited about. That we're just going to call Two Truths and a Lie, where we want to tackle some of the common misconceptions that children's ministry leaders may have about leading ministry, leading volunteers, about teaching. And so we just want to, just help bring some clarity in a fun way.
Well, like it is with everything in the world that we live in today, people have these ideas about what is proper for certain things. They have these thoughts about if you are a teacher, these things have to happen. If you are in ministry, these things have to happen. And so many times we let these common misconceptions either kind of make us feel guilty about how we're doing in the work that God's called us to do, or makes us feel like we have to learn something that doesn't come naturally to us, or that we have to do something that's really difficult or hard to do. And so we were just talking about it one day and thought that it would be fun to talk about what are some of these misconceptions that we have in ministry, and how can we just encourage you that real life is very different than what people on the internet tell you need to do.
Oh, yeah.
And we're people on the internet. We're the people on the internet telling you what you need to do. But hopefully we're going to be more encouraging than some of the things that you're hearing from people trying to tell you, well, this is something that has to be done because of X, Y, Z.
And sometimes it's not people on the internet. Sometimes it's well-meaning people in your own congregation who sometimes have very strong ideas or strong opinions, or
this is the way we've always done it. This is how this has always worked. People that really don't understand what you are dealing with day to day, that think that they know how something should happen. And so we just wanted to give you a little bit of encouragement in this way.
And so our first lie, because we're actually going to start with the lie, is that if there is a task, if there is a need in children's ministry and you don't do it personally, then you're not doing your job. And that's a lie.
That is a lie.
Because truth number one is that it's your job and your role to make sure that everything gets done, not necessarily that you do it personally.
Right.
And so delegation is so important in children's ministry. Training up key leaders, preparing people to be able to assist you with what needs to be done to execute the ministry. You don't have to be the one to do it all, but you are responsible for making sure that it all gets done.
Right. And I think that the problem with this particular lie is that it not only comes from the congregation, because I've had people often come into my office and say, well, we're paying you to do this. So it doesn't only just come from members of the church, but it also often will come from leadership, from other pastors who have that mindset of like, well, you don't need to go into the worship
Mm.
service because you're responsible to always be here. And so I think it's really important for us to help not only the church body, but also to help the rest of the staff understand that, yes, it is your responsibility to oversee all of these things. And sometimes that means that we do have to do things ourselves, but also you can't do it all on your own. It's not possible for you to do it all on your own because you have several classrooms of preschoolers and children. You couldn't teach every single one of them every single Sunday. It needs to be a team effort. And so just because you're in charge of that team doesn't mean that you do everything that's required of the team.
You know, and a second truth with that too is that if you do try to do everything, then that robs other people of an opportunity to serve and to use their gifts. And so also when we shift our mindset that whenever we invite others in to serve, to come alongside us, we are giving people an opportunity to use their God-given gifts in his church, in his body. And that is a good thing, you know, because we want people to serve. We want people to have that experience and the spiritual growth that comes from serving in the kingdom and serving in God's body. And so we don't want to unintentionally rob other people of that opportunity. We want to give them that opportunity and invite them in to come alongside us and to serve and to use their gifting.
And also, if you are trying to do everything yourself, if you're trying to make sure that you have everything covered, that you're doing something all the time, that you never go into service yourself, you never find, help in trying to help with your scheduling and your volunteers and all the things, burnout is going to come so much faster. And we need you in ministry, and we need you to be your strongest self. And so taking care of yourself is incredibly important. And if you're trying to do it all on your own, we promise you it is just not possible. And I know that people make you think that you do have to, but you do not. Like she said, we are responsible for administration of everything that happens. And that means that you're training people and you're helping people come alongside you, not that you're doing it all on your own. And we mean this no matter what size church you're in, whether you have a church of 3,000 or a church of 50, it's still a church ministry. Preschool and children is your church's children's ministry. It's not just yours. So don't feel like all of the weight has to be on your shoulders. Our next lie about volunteers is that you can't fire volunteers. I've heard that so many times over the years in my ministry, people saying, well, they're volunteers. You can't fire them. You can't, you have to use them. And that is just simply not true.
Yeah, because whenever we recruit our volunteers, we want to lay out our expectations clearly. We want to give them training and hold them accountable to the expectations, the training, the policies of our ministry. And so part of our job, part of the tough part of our job is that if volunteers are refusing to follow the policies, like follow our safety and security policies, if they are neglecting their core responsibilities, part of what we have to do is hold them accountable, lovingly, graciously. And if this role maybe isn't the best fit for them or something that they truly can commit to, then, we can reassign them, we can move them, there are a variety of options and ways that we can handle this. I think very rarely, and to the point of being never, is there an opportunity where we call someone and say, you're fired.
I hope not. I know it feels like you want to sometimes, but I hope not.
But there are lots of ways that we can appropriately address volunteers who maybe have a desire to serve or feel an obligation to serve, but for whatever reason, it's not a good fit and it's not working out. And so we do have options to reassign them, move them around, and get them in a place that's ultimately probably going to be a better fit for them as well.
Right. And it's not that this is always easy. again, we want to try to be as gentle with it as we can, because there are so many situations, like you said, where you do have a volunteer that's very excited about wanting to work in children's ministry, but it is just not where their gifting lies. Or you may have Miss Sally, who's been doing this for 60 years and is wonderful, but she just really doesn't have the ability to be able to do some of the things that need to be done in a classroom. And so we do have to find ways that we can gently and lovingly let Miss Sally know that we need her to do another activity. We need her to do another job in the church, or we might even have to rely on our staff, other staff members, to help us find some things that can be done, because our safety for the kids and just the integrity of what we're teaching, those are the hills that you die on. Now, I'm also not going to say that this doesn't sometimes cause difficulties, because I have had a lot of times where church members have gotten very upset with me because we have relocated leaders, or we have had to very gently tell somebody, no, we cannot use these items that you're donating, or because again, safety for our kids and our mission of what we're trying to teach has to come first. So it does sometimes cause some difficult situations, but you really do need to think through the fact that the whole church is responsible for the children's ministry. And so God has given you the people that are to be in place for the positions that you need. It's just finding those people and making sure they're in the right spot. Like, for example, I remember I upset a whole huge group of senior adults in our church one time, because we were getting ready for Vacation Bible School, and a very sweet lady who had really terrific intentions wanted to donate a craft for our preschool. And the craft that she wanted to donate were these elaborate plaster, sort of like a mosaic of Bible stories. And so they were different. They were large. They were kind of the very delicate plaster of Paris kind of material. And they were just a lot of different random Bible stories.
Was it like the figures, or
it was almost like like you can hang it like a flat kind of, kind of, I don't even know how to describe them, but they were large.
It's like a wall.
They were very delicate. And they were random stories. And also her idea for the craft was that they were to be painted by our preschoolers. And she wanted that to be the only craft that they did for the entire week, because they had to paint certain parts and it dry, and paint certain parts and it dry. And that was going to be their only craft for the week of VBS. And she was very excited about it. And she was very adamant that that was what she wanted to do. And I appreciated her thoughts. But there were several issues with this particular situation. One is that they were preschoolers, and these were very delicate plaster of Paris, large, heavy pieces of, material. The second thing was that it was painting with paint that could go on plaster of Paris with preschoolers, which I love to paint with preschoolers, but I use the water-based, like washable. So that was the second thing. The third thing was that none of the plaques had the Bible stories that were being used for VBS on it. So it wasn't tying them back to the lessons that they were learning in the classroom. And also, it was going to be the only thing they did all week long in craft time. And so it wasn't that I didn't really appreciate the thought behind it. And I know that she went to the expense of getting them. She did, all of this before talking to me, and so I had to try to find a very loving way to say, we could use maybe these in a different ministry at a different time. I tried to be very kind and diplomatic about it, but pretty much the entire senior adult ladies class got very angry with me that I would not use her craft for Vacation Bible School. And so it did end up causing quite an issue. And I was very grateful that I had a pastor that completely backed me up on it, understood why it wasn't a safe activity for our preschoolers, why it wasn't appropriate to go along with the Bible verse, that I did offer to use them in other ways in the ministry, but she was just very adamant. So I think that there are situations that happen sometimes that you really can just do the best that you can do. But again, there was not a way that I could rationalize using that craft as the only craft for preschoolers in an event as large as our Vacation Bible School, and keep the kids safe and be able to do all the things that we needed to do. And so sometimes you do have to make those hard calls for the safety of your ministry, for the mission that you have, for the lessons that you're teaching, to make sure that you are credible. So sometimes you do have to make those difficult calls, and sometimes you do have to fire volunteers. But again, ultimately you are responsible for your ministry, and you're responsible for what happens in your classrooms and for what takes place. And so it's just really important that you realize that sometimes people are not going to be happy with the decisions that you make, especially when people want to be involved, when you have somebody that wants to volunteer, that wants to help. And so trying to find some very loving ways to help them to understand that this is not going to be what's best for our kids, and our kids have to be our first priority.
And you cannot control the way that other people respond. We want to take responsibility for handling difficult situations in a gracious, loving way, but that's also clear. We do want to be clear about our expectations, about the needs of the ministry, but still be gracious and loving. And if the response is that, people just cannot fathom why you're needing to make this change, all you can do is the best that you can do to explain it clearly and lovingly, and just leave the rest up to God. And that's so hard. That is so hard.
It is. But it's our responsibility, and it's something that we have to do. And we have to look at it this way too, like when we were talking earlier about Miss Sally, that maybe is just physically not able to do this anymore. You're not wanting to just protect the kids, but you're wanting to protect Miss Sally too. And so sometimes we just have to very lovingly share the truth with people, and find ways that we can help them to still be involved. There are still ways you can be involved, but just maybe not doing that one particular thing. I still wanted that sweet senior adult to help with crafts and to help in Vacation Bible School. Just side note, she did not. She chose not to participate that year, and it made me very sad, and I hated that. But again, I had to make the call. And so, and I had to do what was best for the kids, and I feel like that I did. And so I have to move forward that and be okay with that. And again, I went to the pastor, we talked through it. I wasn't the only one that made that call. I want to make sure that I am making the best and most wise decisions that I can for ministry. But yeah, this was one of those moments that I had to take the hit for that one.
And in your situation too, by holding her accountable and by very graciously, sort of kind of addressing the situation, she sort of self-selected out.
Right.
And not that you necessarily even wanted her to do that,
right?
Because you still wanted her to serve and have that opportunity. But in her case, sometimes even whenever we graciously hold people accountable, sometimes they'll just say like, okay, if I can't do it my way, I'm out. So
So it's always fun. You never know. You never know what you're going to get. But don't allow yourself to feel like you can't. Like don't hold yourself to those responsibilities that you do have control. You are ultimately responsible for the ministry and for the decisions for that ministry.
And then our third and final lie for this episode is that recruitment is one and done. You recruit once for the school year and then just move on and go.
I wish that was the way it was.
Yeah,
I do.
I was gonna say other ministries may be that way. Other ministries may be able to kind of recruit for once for the year and then be good. But preschool ministry, especially kids ministry, is not that way.
And I feel like that this is one of those lies we tell ourselves.
No,
it's not necessarily something that you might hear from somebody else.
Yeah.
This might be one of those things, because we know it is so hard to recruit volunteers. And I think it's really hard to help other members of the staff realize that it is not just a one and done for you, because you have more volunteers. I don't think there is going to be another ministry in your church that has as many volunteers as you need in a year. And I know that a lot of people too, and again, I want us to make sure we're talking to people who have a church of 50 members or a church of 3,000, because over the years, I've heard people say, oh, if you have a 3,000 member church, you have so many more people that you probably can find volunteers super easy. But the problem is the number of volunteers that you need exponentially, rises with the number of church members you have. So whether or not you're trying to recruit 25 leaders for the year, or if you're trying to recruit, where I have friends that are recruiting 500, 600, 700 people every fall. So, it's difficult no matter the situation. There is not, recruiting volunteers is not easy in any sense of the word for any of the situations that's possible.
Right. And there's just some natural turnover that happens in preschool and children's ministry. One, just like what you're saying, because we need so many people. And those people are going to have surgeries, and they're going to physically be incapable of helping in the middle of the year in a way that was very unexpected for them. Like, they didn't anticipate that they were going to break their foot and have to have the surgery, and all these things were going to happen. They'll be, especially working with the preschoolers and kids, there'll be moms who will get pregnant. They'll get pregnant, they'll have babies, they'll get, horrible morning sickness and just need to step back from serving for a season. People will have job transfers and moves. And so I think in children's ministry and preschool ministry, we feel that natural turnover so much more because we have so many people serving in our ministry. Like, yes, that can happen in any ministry, but it's different whenever you have, a tech team of 10 people versus a preschool rotation with 150 volunteers. You feel that so much more whenever 10% of them turn over, when it's one person on the tech team, or 15 people, in the preschool ministry. And so just the sheer numbers make you feel that more.
And it's not something that people just naturally realize. I have spoken to so many pastors over the years when I've gone to visit churches to work with the children in preschool ministry, to help them process the fact that if an adult minister has an adult classroom who has a teacher that breaks a foot, they can jump into that one spot for that 1 week, or that teacher could go in with the broken foot and teach still, or somebody else in the classroom could step up and take over. And they have all of these options for substitutes that in preschool and children's ministry we don't have, because we can't ask one of the 5-year-olds to step up and teach the class if their teacher's not there that day. We don't have the ability as a youth group where I can bring in the 9th and 10th graders into a huge room and teach them all together. I'm not going to be able to do that with a 2-year-old class and a 5th grade class. So, and I know that all of that comes very naturally to us, but I think that so many times other staff members, church families, they don't understand that it's a little bit more difficult for us when we're looking for those replacement people. So because of all of this, our first truth for this particular section is that you have to have a mindset of constantly recruiting volunteers all throughout the year.
Yes. And because part of what we want to be doing is creating a leadership pipeline, creating a pipeline for new teachers. And so this is one of the reasons why I really like the way that our church, for example, is structured, to where we have sort of a traditional Sunday school hour. We don't call it Sunday school, but traditional Sunday school hour with teachers who commit to teach their classroom for the year. And then we also have a worship hour where we have rotating volunteers who serve once a month. And so creating a pipeline where people have a low kind of commitment opportunity to come in and serve just once a month. That gets their feet wet. That gives you an opportunity to observe them. That way, whenever something surprising does happen and the, weekly Sunday school teacher does get pregnant and need to step down, or they get transferred or moved for their job, you have this pool of people who are kind of in this pipeline. You can think, this person has been serving once a month at the worship hour for a year, and they've been doing a great job. They love the kids. They seem to really be enjoying it. This is the person who I'm going to go to next to ask if they can, finish out the year in this Sunday school class. And so constantly recruiting with the mindset of sort of creating this pipeline of, one, giving people an opportunity to serve, in a way that maybe they haven't done before, but that's in a lower commitment level. That way you can then call people up to this greater commitment level and service. And so I think having that sort of structure, and then also just constantly being recruiting, just because, again, the nature of it, just addressing the turnover, staying on top of the turnover, and just being prepared for what's next.
I think it's really helpful too, if as you're pairing your partners as for teaching, if you have the teams that are teaching, that you think about having those strong lead teachers, a newer assistant teacher, somebody that needs to learn the ropes a little bit more, that maybe isn't as comfortable of leading completely themselves, so that they can learn from, but with the idea of not that, Val and Virginia are going to be teaching forever together,
right?
But that eventually, that Virginia is going to continue to be the lead teacher here, and that Val is eventually going to be able to move and become the lead teacher in another classroom. And then you're going to bring 2 more newbies in to be the assistant teachers, so that you're constantly training and helping newer teachers to become more experienced and to be able to become that leadership. And then what you're also doing in that way is that you are not only helping them to become a stronger teacher, but you are also helping taking the pressure off a little bit for those teachers that maybe are a little bit nervous about, wait, you want me to come in and be a lead teacher? I've never really worked in a classroom before. So it's a mindset of constantly training and growing the people that are in your ministry, so that you can find those ways to move them to where they're going to be most effective, but also to be able to pull these people that you need during times when things happen where you are going to need a new lead teacher. Well, you have this assistant teacher that's been working with a lead teacher for a long time, ready to move into that spot. And so I think the other truth in this situation is that you are never going to be overstaffed. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wish that I could tell you that someday you're going to have somebody come up to you and you're going to go, no, I actually don't have any spots available. There's always going to be something. And that's where you find, like, if you do happen to have all of your Sunday school teachers in place, your Bible study teachers in place, where you do say that I can put you on a substitute list, because you can be a substitute then, that you're finding ways to bring people into the ministry. It's if you have that mindset in place where you just know recruitment never ends. I'm constantly building relationships. I'm constantly doing that. And then also, I'm never going to be overstaffed. So I'm constantly needing to look for new people. I'm constantly needing to build relationships. That's just part of it. Jim Weidman is one of my favorite speakers on this topic. I love hearing him talk about how he will literally be in Costco and he'll start recruiting people to work for children's ministry, because he'll run into somebody that recognizes him from the church and they'll say they're a new member, and he'll be like, well, have you found a place to plug in yet? And he is just constantly in that mindset of getting to know people, finding out their strengths, being somewhere and seeing somebody that's a great musician and saying, hey, have you thought about working with the kids? He just is constantly, and he has a lot of great resources. Volunteers That Stick is the first one that came to my mind. But if you ever have an opportunity to hear him speak at a conference or to look for some of his resources, he is, to me, just one of the masters, and really where I learned a lot of how it has to be a consistent mindset, that it can't be just something that you do once a year or something that you put off and you don't think about. Now, I will make another statement with this, though, and this is what I think is really, really important. I had a friend one time. I was working in the children's ministry that morning in the hall, and I saw somebody that I had kind of gotten to know at the church that I felt like I had become friends with, and I hadn't seen her in a little while. And I went outside the door to say good morning to her, and she literally didn't want to talk to me. And she made the statement. She said, because I said, you need to come by and say hi more often. I don't ever get to see you. And she was like, well, I'm always afraid you're going to need help, and I am just not ever going to work in the children's ministry. And so I had to kind of take a step back and say to her, you know what, we can still be friends. I never wanted to be that children's minister that people were afraid to see coming because they were afraid that I was going to be, trying to force them into recruiting. So there is a way to be constantly thinking about recruiting and constantly processing it, but not becoming so negative with the people in your ministry that they think that the only reason why you're talking to them is because you need to recruit them. So it is a balancing act that I feel like that we need to take very seriously and be very careful about, because I never wanted to be that person that they were afraid to see coming. And you're always going to have people that are like that, because honestly, one of the things that my husband said about that particular situation was, well, she just felt guilty about not helping. And so it was her guilt that was, it wasn't that I was, because I told him I had never asked her to do a single thing in children's ministry. I had never tried to recruit her. And so he was like, well, it was just her guilt on that. And so I get that. But I think that we just have to remind ourselves that we want to build these relationships because we want to build relationships, but always be aware and prepared for the fact that maybe that relationship is going to lead to somebody that can do what God's called them to do and use their gifting in your children's ministry. Because that's one of the things that I love about what Jim Weidman says, is that he's giving them the opportunity to do what God's called them to do. It's not that he's begging them to do something that they don't want to do or that they shouldn't be doing. You are giving people the opportunity to serve in the ministry that's going to help children learn more about Jesus.
Well, and to piggyback off of that too, your story and the story of him talking to the new member in Costco, I think part of that is one, to have a system for reaching out to and recruiting new volunteers. I am super fortunate in that this is already very well organized at my church, that we have very good, one, just because of our denomination, we have like a definite like membership process. And we have very good record keeping with our new members. And so it is very easy for me to once a week look at the new members from the previous Sunday, and give each of them a call. I will usually ask our other pastors, be like, okay, these people, are they physically capable to serve in preschool and children's ministry? Is there any reason why I shouldn't ask them, if they're battling some illness or whatever, I don't want to call them up and make them feel bad about having to tell me no. But I will take that list of new members and give them a call and just say, hey, I saw you join the church recently. Welcome. I'm our preschool director. Would you have any availability to serve once a month in our preschool ministry? And so that's an easy system for me to reach out to these new members. And it's easy because other people in our church, other administrators, other leaders have very good record keeping, to reach out to those new members and just invite them in. And so oftentimes, with a new member, I will be, for better or worse, I am the first person asking them to serve somewhere, and if they are at all open to it, usually they'll say yes. There are plenty of people who decline, and that's totally fine. But having that simple system of reaching out to new people as they come, as they join. We also have quarterly new member events, where we, sort of talk about the church and our ministries and all this kind of stuff. And that's another good time where after that, I'll say, hey, I see where, you came to this event, and you're joining our church, would you be interested in serving? And so I think kind of finding those sort of turning points when people join your church, when people come to your new membership class, those are great points to reach out to people and invite them to come serve. And then the other thing about, hopefully people aren't as scared whenever they see me coming or whenever they see my text message pop up on their phone. I do try to be very intentional to, if I learn that a volunteer has a family member in the hospital, send them a quick text message and say, hey, how's your dad doing? I hear he's in the hospital. hey, I'm praying for you. And so I try to be very intentional to have outside conversations with people, to reach out to them about things that have nothing to do with
Right.
preschool and children's ministry. That way they know that I care about them as a person. I care about what's going on in their family. If something weird is happening at their job, I want to follow up and ask about that. And so I think if people know that you care about the other things in their life other than just how you can serve in the ministry, then that's going to build those relationships, and they'll be a little less scared
Yeah.
whenever they see you coming.
Well, and I think that's why it's so important that you talk with your senior pastor, you talk with your leadership about the ability for you to not always be on the preschool and children hall.
Mm-hmm.
And because you have to be able to meet people as they come. So those new membership classes, I know that's another thing to add to your list, but it's great to be able to go to those things if you can, even if you're just popping in to introduce yourself, even if you're only in the sanctuary, if you can't actually make it for the whole entire service, just to be there for the meeting and greeting part of it, to the beginning, at the first part of it, to worship with people so that they see you there, and so that you can be a part of Wednesday night dinner, or that you can do these things. It's where you find those helpers that are going to be leading for you on the hallway, because it's so important for you to be able to get to know the congregation. I think I've told this story before, and I won't ever forget. We were members of the new church when we came, when we moved to Cleveland. We were at Wednesday night dinner, and I was volunteering I had already started volunteering in the preschool area. And I was talking to the people at the table. We would sit at tables with people we didn't know, because we were getting to know people and meeting people. And so somebody at the table asked me something about, well, what are you doing at the church? And I said, well, on Wednesday night, I volunteer, doing this and I said the name of the preschool minister. And they said, who is that? And I'm not kidding. The preschool minister had been the preschool minister for like 10, 15 years. I mean, it was like, and that he, because she just so very rarely ever got out of the preschool hall, he actually didn't even know her name. And so I think it's really important for us to have that opportunity, and to let our senior pastor know, to let our leadership know that we need to be out so people can see us and know us, and we can build relationships, so that we can find these volunteers and find places and the people that are going to be able to use their gifts in all the different ways that we can have people. Because we don't just need teachers. Right. We need a wide variety of gifts and talents in children's ministry. And so it's so very important for us to be able to find the people that are going to fit those needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a whole episode about recruiting volunteers, where we go into, lots of detail about different ideas and different ways to meet people. And so, yeah, so we have a whole episode about recruiting. But just remembering that it's always an ongoing process.
It's never
all
ending.
year long.
We're so sorry. I know that you want us to tell you something different, but that's just, we're telling you the truth. We're being honest. It just is something that's forever and always.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to join us today. We hope that this has been helpful information and encouraging in some way to you and your ministry, so that you can better reach your families and your kids. We would just ask that you would like and subscribe and all the things. And we look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye-bye.